Hello, everyone. This is Emily George Beliveau from the Miami University Alumni Association. Today, we are proud to feature the virtual alumni weekend webinar, Black History at Miami University. To first kick things off, I would like to introduce and thank my colleague and friend, Seth Seward, for organizing this important, extra relevant, and meaningful presentation. Seth joined our team in April of 2019 as Assistant Director of Alumni Relations. Life started at Miami very young, as both parents are Miami alumni. In his first year working at the Alumni Association, he has focused on growing the social media following on both the Black alumni and Latino, and Latinx alumni on all platforms. There are very few people left on this campus that do not know Seth, as he has become the face of the Miami University Alumni Association through all of the interviews, content, and student highlighting that he shares. Questions are going to be collected during registration, and our presenter will address some of those throughout the webinar today. Please note that we may not have time to get to every question. You'll have the option to ask questions during the webinar by clicking the question button. Ask around 90 minutes. Now, the two additional speakers that we are lucky to have this evening. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Emily, for that kind introduction. Here we have Ms. Jacqueline Johnson, our archivist here at Miami University. She's put together a lot of vital information on a variety of topics, which does include Blacks here at Miami University. We also have Valerie Edwards Elliott, class of 1975. She's the manager of the Smith Library Regional History, which is noted for collecting Oxford African American history. And she has written, edited numerous local history publications. So thank you, Jackie and Valerie. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started here. All right, hold the power. All right, so we've done the introductions here. All right, so go ahead and get started here. It's a first mentioned Black person who was a Civil War veteran that had interest in coming to Miami University. Is noted in President Robert Stanton's memo to the Board of Trustees. So it's not known if the gentleman did come to Miami, but it's something that we do have recorded as at least the first person to express interest, and this was in 1868. Okay. So here we have record of one of the earliest known workers at Miami University, and it's Mr. Peter Bruner. He was an escaped slave who ended up having a journey and ended up coming to Miami University. And so he was beloved with the work that he did do. Here is what he went through as a slave. He published his own autobiography, A Slave's Adventures Towards Freedom, not fiction, but a true story of a struggle. And so he did various things on campus as a builder, engineer, and a janitor. So it's an incredible story there of Peter Bruner, the earliest known Black worker at Miami University. All right. So here I'm going to talk about Ms. Nellie Craig, who was the first Black student to enroll and to graduate from Miami. But before we go and talk extensively about her, Valerie, can you kind of share what like the climate was in Oxford as far as Blacks?
Yes, at the time Nellie Craig was growing up and entering Miami in 1903, Oxford's population was a little over 2,000, with African Americans being about 15% of that number. African Americans and whites lived in the same neighborhoods, and Oxford had elected its first African American to village council in 1886. The following year, Oxford Public School was desegregated by an Ohio Supreme Court decision that resulted from a case brought by an Oxford Black resident. So Nellie Craig would have attended this recently integrated school. About a decade before she entered Miami, an African-American man was lynched in Oxford, and in the fall of her first year, another mob attempted to lynch a white man. There were 3 historically Black churches in Oxford at the turn of the century. There were both Black and white veterans of the Civil War living here, with each race having its own separate veterans group.
Okay. So in 1902, it was called the Ohio State Normal School opens its doors. And so they welcomed many women to come, which did include Nellie Craig, who was a resident in Oxford at the time. So 1903 is when she officially enrolls as a student and graduates in 1905, which I guess would be equivalent of like a 2-year teaching degree. She's also noted in the Miami student as being the first African-American to teach to a mixed race classroom. A little bit before Nellie enrolled to Miami, the Ohio Supreme Court ruled that to desegregate schools, and she ended up becoming the first to be able to student teach in front of a mixed race classroom. In 2014, once the Armstrong Student Center was being built, the Black alumni led by Black alumni Dr. Gwen White and and Carolyn Craig led an effort to raise $25,000 to name a room in the Student Center in the honor of Nellie Craig. And this year marks the 115th class anniversary for Nellie Craig, and so that's a significant moment of history for Black alumni here at Miami University. Slide. So here we have noted the first known Blacks to receive bachelor's degrees. Here we have Miss Eleanor Reese, who receives her Bachelor of Science in Education. She went on to teach in Cincinnati Public Schools. First, she died early in 1928, but she was the first to receive her Bachelor of Science degree at Miami. And then we have William Hargraves, who earns a Bachelor of Arts degree in the same year. And family members will follow him. They'll encourage other folks to come to Miami, and multiple folks end up graduating from Miami. And we'll learn more about his son, Colonel William Hargraves II, who ends up coming to Miami. So a couple of years ago, the university came across this story called alumnus Jerry Williams. And before we go into detail about him, Jacky, can you tell us about some of the work that you were involved in with this unique story of alumnus Jerry Williams?
Well, it's really about the entire Department of Special Collections and what we did to discover or rediscover Jerry Williams. And I think the proudest thing that we did was when he had his son and his daughter visit the campus, and we were able to award them the degree for their father.
Yes. So Jerry Williams was native of Cleveland. He ran track, competed, won a state title of the Jesse Owens, who we know is very famous for his track exploits. And so he comes to Miami. It's a 2-sport star in football and track and field. He's, I think, more popular, known for his football exploits. So he wants to get his degree in education and know that he completed his course requirements. And so Mr. Zeb Baker, Dr. Zeb Baker, who is the director of the honors program, found some letters where it shared some history on why he wasn't able to complete his degree. We found out that the university found out that Jerry Williams faced some racial discrimination and trying to student teach, which was another requirement to earn his degree. And so as a result of not being able to student teach because he was Black, he ended up leaving the university without a degree. He joins the military. He becomes a mechanic for the famed Tuskegee Airmen. And after that time, his daughter, Janice, comes to Miami, and she graduates in 1968. And I think that's an interesting history where he faced some racial discrimination, was able to get his degree, but yet, he encouraged his daughter, Janice, to come, and she got her degree in 1968. And so once Jeb found all this information with Jacky and other folks, the administration decided that they should award the degree to Jerry Williams. And Janice comes back on campus in 2017, and she accepts the degree on his behalf. It was a wonderful ceremony that they had for him the whole day. Also, Jerry Williams is also elected into Miami's Athletics Hall of Fame later on as well. Okay, so here's one of the earliest known student organizations founded by Black students here, called the Kappa Sigma Delta. And they formed on the school year of 1938 and 39. They were previously known as the Colored Students Club in order to be an intellectual incentive to the Negro students at Miami University to extend our program in such a manner as to supply correct and sufficient social activities. And so in December of 1938, they officially become a student organization, and they rename it the Kappa Sigma Delta organization. Okay, so now this is another significant moment in Miami history for Blacks is the creation of the Interracial Club. So they were organized and began in 1945-46 school year. The club's first president is alumnus Franklin Shands, an African-American senior and fine arts major. In February 1946, the administration council officially recognizes the club. February 1946, as they recognized the club, leadership of Shands and successors, the club would actively seek to improve the conditions for Black students on campus and off campus over the next 5 years. There's a photo of Franklin Shands. So they are very active to improve the conditions for Blacks. And so some of the things here that they advocated for was the segregated restrooms, movies, barbershops. They were trying to desegregate those things, as well as the swimming pool. And they were also, we learned later on, able to successfully petition the university to allow first non-athlete Black students to officially live on campus. So alumnus Arthur Miller, who we'll learn about later in this presentation, recalls that there were around 10 to 20 African-American students out of a total of 5,300. And so we're a very small population of Black students on campus. So here is, we're talking about the first Black women students to officially live on campus here. And here is alumna Mildred Boston Howe. And so according to Arthur Miller, I guess Black students, like the male Black students, were able to live in the basement and swing hall, like in the cook's quarters, as he phrased it. And so in September 1945, when the Interracial Club successfully petitioned the university, Mildred Boston Howe and her roommate Ari Parks become the first African-American women students officially assigned to live on campus. They were assigned to a room in the basement of Oxford College between the furnace room and the smoking room, not the most ideal location. And so appalled by her assigned room, Mildred chose to live with the African-American family in Oxford. which Blacks were doing originally, living with folks, non-athletes were living with different families outside campus. So her sophomore year, she lived in Talon apartments. Then in her next 2 years, she lives in South Hall, which is currently known as Richard Hall. And Valerie will share more about Ari Parks, who has a great story.
It's actually thanks to Mildred Boston Howell that we learned of Ari Parks Taylor and were able to trace her remarkable career. So even though Mildred refused to stay in their assigned dorm room, Ari remained for the entire school year, but never returned to Miami or to graduate from Miami. But as a former student, she went on to achieve a notable list of firsts. In the Women's Air Force, she became the first African-American non-commissioned officer in charge of WAF training. She became the first African-American woman elected to the Colorado State House of Representatives, the first African-American woman to serve as clerk and recorder for the city and county of Denver, or any county in Colorado. She was the first African-American woman to become chief clerk of Denver Election Commission, and she actually has a building named for her. The Ari P. Taylor Administration Building is in Denver's Montebello district. And in addition to that, she was inducted into the Colorado Black Hall of Fame and the Colorado Women's Hall of Fame. Truly remarkable woman.
Yes, so thank you for sharing that story here, how she was able to still be successful despite, the unfortunate discrimination she found here in Miami. She was still left and was able to find success in her career. So we're very proud of Ari Parks Taylor. Okay. So the Interracial Club and the OCP that involved another incident here. This is at the McGuffey School. And this is a school operated by Miami's School of Education. And so at that time, they were not allowing Black students to student teach. And so here we see a letter from the NAACP to petition the school to allow someone to teach there, and it ends up being Arthur Miller. And so he's the first to do that, to be able to student teach at the operating school. This was in 1947-48. And for a period of time, the school was segregated as well. So it was, for Wright Valley, had a period of time where they just had white students until they desegregated. Was it the 1950s?
No, not until the 1960s.
1960s. And so he was student teaching at a segregated classroom. And so that's another part of history there. All right, so here's more about Arthur Miller. He has a credible story here. So he graduates from Miami, his degree in education. And so he decides to work on campus. He becomes the first Black person to reach managerial rank. So he worked in food service. He also, for a long time, served as president of Oxford's branch of the NAACP. He was involved in Martin Luther King's visit to campus in 1959 to learn more about the Freedom Summer at the Western College. His name's inscribed on the memorial. Served on the Oxford City Council, vice mayor, was a founder of my university's credit union, and the Arthur Miller Scholarship Fund was established in his honor. And so he was known for his historical knowledge of Blacks at Miami University and in Oxford. As numerous other family members followed him to graduate from Miami as well. And then there's like an archived link where Valerie had interviewed Mr. Miller, which we can provide to you later, so we can tell more about his story. So for a long time, there was no orders or fraternities that were founded by Blacks that were on Miami's campus. There was no chapters on campus until the Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity was able to successfully petition the university to get a chapter on campus. So the Delta Epsilon chapter was established. That was founded in March 9, 1953. And other Black fraternities followed them. the Kappa Delta chapter, the Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity, which my father belongs to, in April 1980. The Alpha Beta Kappa chapter of the Phi Beta Sigma fraternity in April 1999, and the Tau the chapter of Omega Phi Psi fraternity in February 2020. So this past year, they just finally were able to get a chapter. So as we mentioned here, Arthur Miller had some involvement with Dr. King, Reverend Dr. Martin King Jr., visiting campus in 1959. So he gave a speech on race at the University Center Ballroom in December of 1959. Mentioned alumnus Arthur Miller, he was president of Oxford chapter in the OCP, helped welcome King to Oxford. A student group named the Campus Independent Club invited Dr. King to campus. And following the speech, he held a discussion with the group and faculty. Okay, so as we mentioned earlier about Freedom Summer, it was started on Western College, which is now Western Quad, Western Quad for Miami University. So it was originally known as the Mississippi Summer Project. It was 1964 voter registration aimed at increasing Black voter registration in Mississippi. The Freedom Summer workers included Black Mississippians, hundreds of out-of-state, predominantly white volunteers. These 1-week orientation sessions for the volunteers were held from June 14 to June 27 in Oxford, Ohio, on the campus of the Western College for Women, now part of Miami University. Unfortunately, tragically, James Chaney, Andrew Goodman, and Michael Swarner were murdered in Mississippi for trying to register Black folks down there. And there was a memorial dedicated in their honor and to the Freedom Summer volunteers that were here on campus. That was dedicated in 2000. As mentioned before, alumnus Arthur Miller's name is engraved in stone. And this past spring semester, Associated Student Government passed a resolution for Miami University to officially recognize the slain civil rights activists by naming student lounges for them near the grounds where they had trained during Freedom Summer in 1964. So at this time, we'll pause for any questions that we have for this presentation.
So far, we don't have any questions. We've had a few people say that they would like to rewatch this. And you can rewatch this right on our webinar site where you're logged in. We will have it up for whenever and however and wherever you are.
Okay. Yeah, so they're still watching. We'll still pause another moment for folks to ask questions. And so I hope that you're enjoying the content so far. So, all right. So we'll go on to the next slide here. A few years ago, the university decides to use a Freedom Summer event to honor folks who were involved in civil rights. And so in 2018, they honored Congressman John Lewis. They honored him in Washington, D.C. with a nice ceremony there surrounded by students. There he is with President Crawford. They're also, last year, they were at Mount Zion Methodist Church in Philadelphia, Mississippi, where the 3 slain workers there were volunteers were there and had fellowship at that church. And so they decided to honor them as the church continues to keep their memory alive. And this past year, the university honored Western College alumna Carolyn Jefferson Jenkins. Okay. So through the test of time, the churches that were founded in Oxford by Black folks that were provided a positive impact for Black students all 3 years that when they enrolled at Miami University. Journey here. So they were known for putting on social gatherings. There was a time where Larry Young noted in his video recording that there was very limited any type of social activities for Blacks on campus. They were not welcome in other social activities on campus. And so the churches stepped up and were able to facilitate some social events for them to participate in. Through the time as well, the churches also helped support students financially and also with other means. They also, some of the churches helped with different social activism activities as well, as alumnus Larry Young noted. Some of these churches included, not all of them, but Bethel African Methodist Episcopal Church here, which is an early photo right here, the First Baptist Church, God's House of Praise and Worship, formerly known as First Pentecostal Bible Way Church. And so there's other churches as well, but they provided a great impact for Black students over the years as a resource. So also what is very important here is alumni in the Black alumni in the 1960s that graduated from Miami and ended up coming back to work for the university. And so here we have the top left, we have Bill Madison, class of 61, Larry Young, Lawrence Young, we've got his bachelor's and master's degrees at Miami on the right, and then at the bottom left, we have Bob Hart. He came back, and then we also have alumnus Joseph Cox. And so Bill Madison, he taught management in the business school. Lawrence Young served as director of the Office of Educational Opportunity, and later as the director of Minority Student Affairs. Joseph Cox was a professor and dean of the art department. He also served as an associate provost. And Bob Hart was the director of Multicultural Leadership Program and the Summer Leadership Institute. And so Bill Madison was widely revered for multiple decades of Black students that went to Miami. He's known for being stern, helping to correct students, but also making sure they provide resources for them as well. And so he was very revered and like a fatherly figure for folks. Larry Young, also as well, he's also involved in Miami's first larger recruitment efforts of going out to recruit Black students and students of color to come to Miami University. And so he was involved in that, and he also was involved with issues that Black students had on campus to help remedy those issues. If they had any racial discrimination. So Bob Hart, he came out of retirement to come and work at Miami University to this program called Multicultural Leadership Program and Summer Leadership Institute, which helped bring students of color and diverse backgrounds to Miami and help provide many opportunities for those students while they're on campus. Of course, we have alumnus Joseph Cox, who was very beneficial in numerous ways. He was, helped sororities and fraternities get suites and housing. He also was a home to Black folks when they came here. Also, his wife, Barbara Cox, also was influential for students when they came here as well. And so he was there at tense situations that were going on where Black students may have been protesting for things that they wanted to improve. I think that they felt they were being discriminated against. And so Joseph Cox was there for those students. And all these gentlemen were there for students when they were going through some issues of racial discrimination and things of that nature on campus. And so, so despite the discrimination that they documented and told on campus, they still decided to come back to the university, and without them, many of our Black alumni now may not have made it through the university due to various issues. So we do thank them for their service and contributions to our university. And they also were very integral in helping start the first Black alumni meeting and events in 1985. Okay. So 1968 is like a pivotal time for Miami University as they start hiring Black faculty, and some other things some changes start to be made. So Dr. Heenan Wilkins, the first Black tenured professor at Miami University, is hired in 1968 as in the Department of Spanish and the Portuguese department. He helps to establish what is now known as the Black World Studies program at Miami. And Dr. Coates mentioned to me that he's like a mentor to him. Dr. Rodney Coates, who chairs the program now, was influenced by Dr. Wilkins. Dr. Wilkins started and set up the Equal Opportunity Office during the time of social unrest in 1970. And Dr. Wilkins was critical in helping to hire Black faculty at Miami. In 1992, he was honored with the Harrison Medallion from the university, highlighting his national contributions to education. And the Heenan Wilkins Fellowship Program was created, and it provides a culturally diverse faculty member with mentoring, a salary equal to faculty at the same rank, and funding for research and potential of obtaining a tenure track faculty position at Miami. So he did a lot of great work here at Miami. So the oldest known student groups founded by Black students, the Black Action Student Association, was established. As they noted here, they were Miami University more responsive to the needs of Black students. And keep in mind, this is around the civil rights movement. Dr. King had died, and so a lot was going on in the country. And so Paul Payne becomes the BSAA's first president, as they become the most visible African-American organization on campus, dealing with issues such as continued discrimination against African-American students, the need for Black studies curriculum, and recruitment of African-American students and faculty. Largely due to their efforts, Miami begins to officially observe Black History Month. And so they are essentially kind of going to continue the work that the Interracial Club was doing in the 40s and 50s with their social protests. Office of Black Student Affairs is created in 1969, an ad hoc committee on human relations, appointed in 1968 to assess areas of social, academic, and political discrimination against African-American students. It's recommended the creation of the Office of Black Student Affairs, and Kenneth McDowell serves as the first head of this. So, as aforementioned, the Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity was founded, but now we have a first chapter of the Delta Sigma Theta. Sorority Incorporated is founded here. So the Zeta Mu chapter, and they become the first Black sorority to establish a chapter after a successful try in the 1950s. And the following Black sororities followed them was the Lambda Mu chapter of the Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority, Inc., which my mother is a member of, established on May 7th, 1977. And the Zyro chapter of the Zeta Phi Beta Sorority, Inc., established on April 28, 2001. And so both the Black Greek life here is very popular on campus, and they've been able to do a lot of successful service-oriented things, and it was a great experience for Black students that were initiated into these organizations. Here we have Miami's first known Black woman tenured professor, Dr. Marion Musgrave. The Black alumni noted that she was very popular with Black students on campus. They noted that her classes were always full. Even my dad had a class with her when he was a student here, Father Rollin Seward. She is also known that she was a grade school classmate of former university President Shriver. And she was the first African-American woman permitted to teach Black authored literature, and was also first to lead the newly established Black World Studies program. And she also is noted for teaching alumna Rita Dove, who goes on to win Pulitzer Prize in poetry. And we'll learn a little bit more about her later on in the presentation. Okay. So Dr. Charles Churchwell, so he is hired here in 1969. So he becomes Miami's first Black administrator, which he is hired as Miami's director of libraries. So he helped redesign and renovate the library system. And he also served as associate provost in 1972. And I also learned that Valerie worked for him during their time here in Miami for Dr. Churchwell. And now we have Jerome Conley, who's serves as the dean of the library. So he's a Black male here on campus, and he's doing great work in that capacity as well. Dr. Churchwell. So this history is made in athletics here as the first assistant coach, Black assistant coach was hired on the Miami's football team. Here's alumnus Terrell Burton, class of 56. So he's named assistant coach under head coach Bill Mallory in 1969. In his time at Miami, he played halfback under former university football coach, legendary coach Eric Parstegan. So this past year, I came across information of Miami's first Black homecoming queen, Deborah Jackson, class of 73, a native of Oxford, is voted as a homecoming queen in 1970. She was a member of the Zeta Mu chapter of the Sigma Theta sorority, which was just established before she got there, and also the Black Student Action Association. She went on to graduate with a degree in art education from Miami. So here are some photos here. I see her riding, so she said she rode in a red convertible. So she's shaking hands with President Shriver there. And there's a nice photo there that she took on campus for the homecoming contest. And she told me that she was very surprised that she was even picked because, Black students weren't very popular at the time. She was a native of Oxford, so she didn't think anybody would really think much of her. And so she was very happy that she was selected. And so, as I mentioned before, she was riding that red convertible, and she still remembers Black students at the time shouting and waving at her as she's going by. So she also is known for, she goes to Columbus, and she's also an art teacher. She does a lot of art on polymer art, which is revered nationally, and is now being sold at the Smithsonian Museum of African American History and Culture. So we're proud of her work there as well. Let's go on to next slide. More on Deborah Jackson. Her family is has 4 generations of Black students to attend Miami, with her aunt Ruth Revere graduated from Miami at age 55 in 1981. So there's a lot of folks in that family that went to Miami. So here, Debbie's sorority sister, Miss Belinda Church, becomes Miami's first Black cheerleader. Under some controversy with the voting, there was Black students at the time and Black faculty thought that there was some discrimination going on as far as Black cheerleaders being able to join the varsity squad. And so she was able to successfully join the squad after some petitioning around the university. And she was also, as I mentioned, she was a sorority sister of Deborah Jackson. So she's a member of the Zeta Mu chapter of the Delta Sigma Theta sorority Inc. All right. So in 1969, as well, so Black Student Action Association was petitioning the university to hire somebody to teach Black history in the history department. And so they did a big protest, which caused President Shriver to show up. And so they were able to successfully petition the university to hire somebody to teach Black history. And they hired Sherman Jackson, who's also Black. So he comes, as I mentioned, as after pressure and protests from Black students, the Black Student Action Association. And now he is a professor emeritus of history. He also researched and taught American constitutional history and law, presidential studies, Civil War, and Reconstruction. So the Rowan Hall protest, which was what we know was for well known for the Vietnam War protest. Also, the Black Student Action Association also decided to protest with what they felt at the time to improve conditions for Black students on campus. And so I've heard of stories of Black students at the time that were tear gassed. And matter of fact, Debbie Jackson, she was there, and she still remembers being tear gassed. And I think she said she crawled back to Shriver, was able to call her mother to come get her. And so the BSAA, they were advocating for better representation in faculty hiring, student recruitment, and other related issues at the same time. Mostly white anti-war counter-protest movement was occurring on campus. So both groups operate in parallel with some limited overlap until the Rowan Hall takeover. And it was there that the two groups came together, realized it could be a benefit of both groups, and combined their demands to the administration. And so folks are arrested at the time, and campus was shut down for a number of days. And alumnus Larry Young noted that himself and Dr. Mary Musgrave stepped in to help petition the university to not expel students. Some of these students, Black students, were set to graduate in that spring semester, would have been expelled had it not been for them to step in, and those students were able to graduate on time. We'll take some time here. Is there any questions?
We actually had some questions come in, which is awesome. So I also have 3 comments. Jalen Cox said that she found out through social media that you'd be presenting about her grandfather, and she was very excited to stream in.
Hello, Jalen.
Madison was a giant for Blacks at Miami was another comment. And then someone said, I remember Larry Young. He was supportive to us when I was there, but still there were issues with tenured professors deflating grades for Black students. I'm glad that he is included. Thank you. We have a few questions about enrollment, and we will follow up with you and involve the right people from enrollment so that we give you accurate numbers. So anyone who asks about enrollment, we're happy to connect you afterwards once we get the accurate information. My question was, what year had the most Black faculty?
That's a great question. We're at this slide, we're just about to learn about the Associated Black faculty. So in 1970, there was around 12. And Joseph Cox, when his video recording, was saying that there were certain departments, for whatever reason, was not hiring Black faculty. And so that was an issue. So that information I can we can get to you. But as we're just about to show here, there was at least 12 of them in 1970 at that time, when they formed this organization. Next question.
How can we access the university archives of the Black Action Movement, BAM?
Yes, so, and Jacky can talk a little more about this. There is an online digital archive that folks can access. And Jacky, can you kind of tell folks how to get to that and find information?
Oh, yeah, they can go to the Special Collections website, Special Collections and Archives website, to the University Library website.
Okay. Yes, and so they have the Pacific section for African Americans. Can look up information.
Have there been other Black homecoming queens or kings?
Yes, there have been in the past. Yes, I know Larry Cameron also goes by Macho Means. He was voted in when I was here at Miami. Not sure if there was any other Black homecoming queens. This past year, Jermaine Thomas was received acclamation for the homecoming as well. He's a graduating senior.
Someone asked, I graduated in 1970. My impression was that Miami had far fewer African American students than other universities.
Yes.
Is that true? And what were the reasons behind the low African American enrollment?
So we'll learn a little bit here. There was very low enrollment. I've heard different numbers. I heard it was like less than 100, around 100 students in the at least late 1960s, 1970s. I heard of that number. And so there's a lot of pressure on the university to put more resources into it. So I think that type of issue was going on, was trying to petition the university to put more resources into getting more Black students on campus. There might have been some other reasons, but I know that was an issue that they were fighting internally.
This is a historical enrollment question, so I think you might know. What year had the most Black enrollment for students?
Recent, every year, well, I'll have to look that up. I'll get back to you. I'm kind of a little hairy on that subject. I can do the research and make sure to get that for you. Now, currently, it's around 700 on Oxford's campus right now, and I believe 900 on like 960 or so on all Miami's regional campuses, plus the Oxford campus, plus the graduate students, and so it's still under 10% enrollment right now. So it's been like that consistently.
Someone asked, sorry if you already said it, but what year was BSAA founded?
1968, 1969 that's when they were founded. The first president was Paul Haynes.
All right, I think we'll keep on going.
Okay, so we do think the question, someone asked about Black faculty here. And so the mathematics professor, Robert Smith, becomes president of what is now known as the Black faculty organization that's still around now, which does do various social activities, things of that nature, supporting Black faculty and staff. Robert Smith there. Okay, so 1971, it's a little bit of controversy here. There was a creation of Minority Affairs. So the Office of Black Student Affairs becomes Office of Minority Affairs, and then the controversial move is placed under the Office of Student Affairs. So at the time, the Black folks were not too happy about that, and it's listed there in this article. Okay, so we had mentioned earlier about alumnus William Hargraves, who graduated in 1925, was the first Black to receive his Bachelor's of Arts degree at Miami University. And so multiple family members followed him, including Colonel William Hargraves II. Alumnus William Hargraves II graduates in 1954. He becomes the first African-American officer in Miami's ROTC. So he made history in that regard. He also was one of the founders of the Delta Epsilon chapter of the Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity, which was founded in 1953. And as I mentioned, like nine other relatives in his family end up graduating from Miami. So the Miami Student did an article a few years back where he's quoted in there. And he was saying that he had got scholarships to historical Black colleges at the time, and he was leaning towards that direction. But his father, William Hargraves, suggested he look into Miami. And this is even despite Black folks not even be able to live on campus. There was segregation in Oxford at the time. So all types of discrimination he was getting in the classroom and in Oxford, and his father still wants him to come to Miami. So William Hargraves II, Colonel Hargraves, receives discrimination himself in the classroom, I believe in the English class. And so the professor would purposely give him bad grades. And once Colonel Hargraves graduates, that professor comes to him and apologizes. That's what was part of the story that he shared in the Miami Student. Also, Colonel Hargraves' home was a place for Black students to visit as well. And so he was present on campus, kind of helping Black students while they were here and being a refuge or a resource for them while they were here in the 80s at least. All right, so the University Committee appointed in 1976 to review the status of women and racial ethnic minorities at Miami concludes the following year that there are deep and disturbing divisions between males and females, Blacks and non-Blacks. That's the most basic issues of equality. So it's recommended for a Black Cultural Center to be created, and center being housed in Bishop Hall. So it's ended up becoming the Center of Black Culture and Learning. And so it was there in Bishop Hall for many years. And then the center assumes different names over the year and moves to different buildings. And outside Miami, it was called Office of Diversity Affairs. It was in Krieger, and then it moved to third floor Shriver. Now it's known as the Center of Diversity and Inclusion and the Armstrong Student Center, formerly ODA, but it incorporated the LGBTQ plus students in that entity and the Women's Center. And so they decided to name it the Center of Student Diversity and Inclusion in the Armstrong Student Center. Okay. So as someone mentioned about recruitment, the university does finally put resources into recruitment. And so here, Black alumni were critical in getting this program started. Here is alumnus Wayne Dancy and his fraternity brother, Doug Banks. Same fraternity as my father, Kappa Alpha Psi. And they helped get the program started in 1981. So under the oversight of the Director of Minority Student Affairs, Lawrence Young, the Bridges program was conceived as a way to permit Black high school seniors to experience a weekend of college life at Miami. And so in 1993, it becomes a part of the admissions office minority recruitment efforts. And so it still goes on. The program is still going on today. And so that was critical to get more Black folks, students of color here. Now some more diverse group backgrounds that get students to come here now. So now, as I mentioned before, it was done to address very low numbers of minority students that were enrolled at Miami at the time. And Wayne Dancy's, the Miami merger, his wife, Paula Dancy, graduated from here, and his daughter, Leah Dancy McComb, graduated from Miami as well. So they're a Miami family. And Doug Banks, wife Kelly Banks, graduated here, another Black alumna, and they have two of their children also graduated from Miami as well. So now, as I mentioned, the Bridges program still continues. The alumna Jonica Moore, class 98, is also a member of our alumni board of directors. My associate board of directors leads the program and does a great job. Where the students come from various big cities around Ohio and from out of state. They come for like a 2-night stay. They're here for 2 days as well. And they do great programming where they're able to live with students and go to different departments on campus and meet with faculty and kind of see what life like is as a student. So she does a great job with that program. And they also have an opportunity to earn a scholarship as well. And so once those students, if they're accepted and enrolled into Miami, they can participate in the Bridges Scholars Program, which is established under Miami Student Success Center, to continue to provide support to them as they're here as students. And alumna Dr. Monica Atkins helps run that program as well. So here we're going to athletics. Here is Ron Harper, a native of Dayton, Ohio. So he comes to Miami in 1982. He holds many records in basketball. Career games started, career points scored, best lifetime scoring average, and the most lifetime field goals scored. He goes on to play for 5 teams in the NBA. And he won 5 NBA championships as a member of the Chicago Bulls and Los Angeles Lakers. And he played with legendary players such as Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Shaquille O'Neal, and Kobe Bryant. He's also coached on the legendary coach Phil Jackson. And then his daughter, Jacqueline, graduates from Miami in 2011. So she's my classmate. And if it had not been for Ron Harper, she would never come here to graduate. Ron did not receive his degree here, but he thought it was important that his children that follow him get his degree. And Jacqueline becomes the first one to be able to get her degree here. So it's the Ron Harper's family there. All right, so Department of Affirmative Action and Human Resources, the Affirmative Action Office of Minority Affairs, Center for Black Culture and Learning, and Handicapped Services are merged into one department in Affirmative Action and Human Resources Development in 1985. And another history that was made here, the first Black student was elected student body president through the Associated Student Government. 1985 here, John Cage is elected and received 55.8% of the vote. So that leads to more Black males through time that are elected as well. We'll learn more about some more history that was made in that front later on. There's alumnus Wayne Embry. He's a star basketball player at Miami in the 1950s. He was a member of the Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity, the Delta Epsilon chapter. So he played professional in the NBA. And he becomes the first Black general manager of an NBA franchise, the Milwaukee Bucks, I believe in the 80s or 70s. So he also becomes general manager of the Cleveland Cavaliers. In the 1980s, 1986, he was appointed by Governor Celeste to be the first African-American to serve on the Board of Trustees of Miami University. So he makes history in that regard, Wayne Embry. So we're very thrilled about his work that he did. And he later on served as chairman as well, the Board of Trustees. And now there's a couple of Blacks there on the Board of Trustees, a national trustee, Jeff Begase, who was just appointed this year. He's a CBS News correspondent, class of 92, and also Sir Rod Richardson, who I believe is the treasurer, if I'm not mistaken. So here is alumna Rita Dub, a native of Akron. So she comes here and does well. She was under the tutelage of Dr. Mary Musgrave. And so she later wins a Pulitzer Prize Poetry in 1987. She also become laureate in 1993. And also later on, she wins the National Medal of Art that was given to her by former U.S. President Barack Obama in 2012. So we're very proud of her accomplishments. Dr. Murders Powell makes history, and she is appointed vice president for student affairs. She originally came to Miami in 1981 as President Paul Pierson's executive assistant. Under her presidency, she does a lot of things, which includes minority enrollment, financial aid opportunities, which increased significantly. And she's also very involved in strengthening relationships in the Miami tribe when the universities transitioned from the Redskins to the Red Hawks. And so she was honored by them recently. She is the stepmother of alumnus Vade Powell. Powell serves on our Alumni Association Board of Directors. So this is a significant moment. Looks like I'll take some questions here. I'll stop here. The Ku Klux Klan marches on campus. Now I've heard verbally at least twice they visited here, and I'll have to find information on the second time. what happened here in 1989, article here, it highlights that they plan to march in Oxford to protest suspension of white students at Talawanda High School. So they marched in Oxford in spring of 1990. And that memory of them marching here on campus still scars Black alumni today. It's been well over a couple of decades, and it's still etched in their memories now. During that time. And so that was a time where it was, where they wish they could forget. So as I mentioned, that it was noted that they marched twice. And so I'll have to find some article or something to see to corroborate that, but that multiple folks said they were here twice. It was a very scary moment for Black folks and other folks that were not too thrilled of the KKK marching here as well. So I'll take some questions. Any more questions come through?
Yeah, Seth, if you want to stop sharing your presentation so that they can see both of us, then we'll be able to answer the questions and they can see you.
Okay. So that's an exit out of the PowerPoint now, or?
Yeah, if you're comfortable with it.
Yeah, okay. So we'll do a part 2. We'll make an announcement of that, and there's a lot more history to share of things. So go ahead and answer some questions.
A comment from Nicole Ward is that BSAA started having their own homecoming events where most Black students attended instead of the university events. Joe Cox was the integral person in getting Black student involvement in Laws Hall and Associates programs. And Kelly Scott said that she remembers visiting Miss Hargraves during her time at Miami and definitely was a refuge from all the stress. And to thank you for recognizing Mr. Bridges. Her and her roommate were also student hosts for Bridge program.
Wonderful.
And someone asked, how does history reflect on what needs to change going forward, and what accountability should the university have to breaking down systemic racism? I know you hosted a town hall last week for the Black Alumni Facebook group. Maybe you have some more upcoming events to share, having these conversations.
So to give you some context, Black students have been a very small minority at Miami for a long time. While they're able to have the degree and be successful in their careers, with having a degree. So just with myself and with my parents and many others, unfortunately, they've gone through some things, racial discrimination with faculty and students. And those things have taken place over the years. And so as a result, they protested, as at least we know, and be documented in the 1940s at the Interracial Club. And they're still doing it now with a couple years past with the Black Action Movement 2.0. And now with the climate now of George Floyd's death, Ramon Arbery, Breonna Taylor, we have Black alumni and students all over the country that are literally risking their lives through a pandemic to protest, systemic racism. And so right now, the students, organized, where they can, have those conversations with the university. I think there are people here that want them to succeed, but I think there's some work that has to be done. I don't think it's going to happen overnight, but there's some things that can be done. The university and students and faculty and alumni all involved. So I think hopefully that'll happen. The Black alumni did write a letter to President Crawford sharing some of our concerns, some of the concerns that they perceive of Black students on campus, and with we might as well say the controversy of the professor allegedly saying some racist things to protesters of the Black Lives Matter event in Oxford. And so there's a lot of folks that are wanting to see Miami succeed, even despite Black folks want to see Miami succeed, despite the history of perceived discrimination that they have on campus. And so hopefully there's going to be some concrete steps taken, folks that get paid more than me, hopefully be able to get some things done.
Yeah, and maybe alumnus will share out that letter, as well as I found a link online for everyone that was asking for statistics on student race and Black students. So we can send that link out as well. And this question kind of correlates really well. It says, what are ways to stay involved and keep supporting Black students at Miami?
The scholarships out there that you can support them, the African Memorial Scholarship, which was established, I believe, under Dr. Gwen White when she was leading. So you can support that way. We're also going to have a Move in Miami campaign that'll take place later this year, where you can support specific Black student organizations that are raising money. Come back to campus whenever that makes sense to speak with students and meet with students. You can join our online platform, Miami Alumni Connect, which our colleague JJ does a great job with, where you can virtually talk with students from a career standpoint, but also students can reach out to you if they're, having some issues, trying to assimilate here in Miami and have those tough and critical conversations. Also, hire some of our students, hire them to internships, hire them into jobs, to help them get opportunities, and just be a mentor for them to open the doors for them once they're here on campus and once they leave. So those are a number of things that you can help out with currently.
Someone just asked, I do not believe so, but I'm very uncertain. Has Miami had a member of the BIPOC serve as our university's president? BIPOC meaning Black, Indigenous, person of color.
Serve as president of Miami University? No. I think it's been all white males, so I could be wrong, but that hasn't been. We've been like in the board of trustees from that angle. Dr. Burtis Powell's role. She had a lot of power on campus through student affairs and was able to do some things. And so they've been in high positions, but not president of the university.
That is it for questions right now. If you want to go back to your presentation.
Okay. All right. So
feel free to keep asking, folks.
So we got 20 more minutes, so we'll see how much we can get through here. Let's see where we're at. Let's find my place. Okay. All right. So this is a significant moment in history for Blacks here in Miami. Joby Wright is the first Black head coach to be hired at Miami University. He ended up coaching the men's basketball team, and he led them to 3 consecutive winning seasons, appearing both in NCAA and NCAA tournaments before leaving Miami in 1993. So there's Joby Wright, and I believe he played under Bobby Knight in Indiana, I believe. I could be mistaken. So you mentioned before, it's been a point of contention over the years, with the low enrollment of Black students, minority students here at Miami University. So 1992 article, the Chronicle of the Higher Education Reports at Miami's 1991 African American student population still comprised a very low percentage of 2.6%.
Hey, Seth.
Yes.
Would you mind sharing your slides again?
Okay, so no one can see it. Yes, hold on. Sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. Went on without my apologies. I went on. So I mentioned about Joby Wright here. There's a slide about him becoming the first Black head coach at Miami University, and we're talking about enrollment. So sorry about that. So it's noted in this article that there's a very low percentage, like 2.6% total of Black students enrolled in Miami at the time. And the Office of Admission reports a disappointing increase of less than 1% Black student enrollment for the coming school year. However, through the work of Dr. Burtis Powell, we learned more about the I Am Miami campaign. They start recruiting more folks here to campus, so that percentage does go up. But however, in 1995, was noted by the North Central Association of Colleges and Universities credit team states that the university must do more to foster diversity on campus. So there's still work to be done. So this was an exciting program that students could take part in. Gail de la Piana, Western College professor and architect, starts taking a group of students to Ghana for the first time in 1995. This becomes a regular summer class and resulted in constructing multiple buildings for the village of Afro Adamasi. If I'm not mistaken, Valerie, your husband takes students there as well currently, or has?
Yes, this summer's was canceled, but the Department of Architecture has taken that on after Gail retired and has made it continue.
Will you have your husband's name again?
J. Elliott.
Okay, yeah, so him and other folks were been able to take students to Ghana, and so that's an exciting venture there for students to participate in. Thank you again, Valerie. Mm-hmm. Here is Charlie Coles. So I mentioned about Debbie Jackson, who was Miami's first Black homecoming queen. Charlie Coles is her brother-in-law, married to her sister Dolores, also known as Dee Dee. Charlie Coles, he graduates in 1965. He plays on the basketball team. He comes back and he's hired as the basketball coach for Miami University, assistant in 1995, and then head coach in 1997. So he coached teams through many championship seasons, including the Sweet 16 berth in 1998, 1999. We had just last year's homecoming and our last year's alumni weekend celebrated that team's 25th anniversary, led by Wally Zerbiak, also known as Wally's World. So I remember from my childhood, my dad rooting for the team on television. So I still kind of remember that. So Charlie Coles became Miami's all-time leader in victories. He's enshrined to Miami's Athletic Hall of Fame and also the Mid-American Conference Hall of Fame. He did pass away a few years ago. And his granddaughter, Jazz Bennett, who will be a sophomore, did a wonderful speech on his behalf, a great speech when she was just a teenager on his behalf. And she used to go attend basketball games as well. So as I mentioned, he married Dolores Jackson Coles, so we call her Dee Dee. The children, Mary Coles Bennett, she got her master's degree in 98, and Christopher Coles graduated as well. I'm not mistaken, Valerie, his mother-in-law, name is escaping me. Someone in the family member, they housed Mildred Boston Howe when she left camp, when she decided not to live on campus and live with a Black family. Do you remember who was that?
That's correct. She told us in her interview that she lived with Mrs. Jackson on East Vine Street, and she had very fond memories of Mrs. Jackson, and it sounded as though they kept in touch even after Mildred left Miami.
Is that Dee Dee?
That would be her mother, I believe.
Oh, her mother. Okay, the mother, Dee Dee. Okay.
I think so.
Okay, well, thank you. Before I go there was, I forgot to mention, before Mildred Boston Howe and R.A. Sparks came to live on campus, there was the Black families in the community that Black folks would live for a number of years. And then Miss Jackson, at least where Mildred could live, despite the conditions of their assigned housing. Okay. So I Am Miami campaign starts here. And this is a entity created under direction of Dr. Murders Powell. And so I was told that they were recruiting students on the I-75 corridor. So this helps increase minority enrollment. Here, alumna Shantae McKay, who is on our board of the Alumni Association Board of Directors, was featured on this campaign, and other alumni as well. And then still recently, other folks were on this campaign. And so that starts in 1998. So we read previously that the university was still lagging in minority recruitment. So this program was put in place to help get more minority students here enrolled into Miami. So here we want to share about alumnus Dr. Ron Crutcher. He's hired in 1999, appointed as provost of the university, and I think he may be the first Black individual to be in that position. Could be wrong. He's a former director of School of Music, University of Texas at Austin, and a Miami alum, 1969. Dr. Crutcher's initiative include centered around increasing academic excellence and diversity. And he left Miami to become president of Wheaton College, and he now serves as president of Richmond University. He told me that he arrived to Miami as a teenager who was trying to play the cello. He's a cellist. As a matter of fact, he played the cello online for folks that were quarantining. And he wrote an op-ed in the New York Times quoting sometimes of when he was here in Miami of some racism that he experienced. A recent article this year. And so him and other Black students were going through some things. And he told me that he was one of 9 or 10 in his graduation class that he told me. So it was very few Blacks at that time. So last year was his 50th class anniversary, which he did celebrate along with current Governor Mike DeWine. So he was on campus on the alumni weekend. And his wife, Betty, was here. Betty earned her PhD in 2006. And I also later learned that his younger cousin, Dan Arazo, graduated from Miami. And Dan said that Ron was influential in him coming here to Miami. So we're proud of Dr. Crutcher and the work he's doing. We also have Dr. Walter Kimbrough, who's also president of the university. He's president of Dillard University, historical Black college in the South. And so those are the two Black graduates in Miami that are currently serving as presidents of universities. So we're proud of their work. All right, so before Dr. Powell retires, some of her work is coming to fruition here. As there was a set goal to get to 10% minority enrollment, and they fall just short of that. But her work helped to get more Black students here during that time before more minority students here on campus. Documented and shared about some of the recruitment efforts that she helped spearhead. Our last slide here, Janie Kamara is elected student body, the first Black woman elected student body president at Miami's history. She was elected earlier this spring, and she follows the line of other Black folks to serve in that position. And that includes Wells Didlick, who was elected like vice president at the time, and he was appointed to serve as president, what they called then the Student Faculty Council. Also alumnus John Cater, we mentioned, alumnus Randy Malcolm Thomas, who works on campus, alumnus Nathan Eastet, Chris Davis, alumnus Brian Alexander, and the current outgoing president, Jalen Perkins. I believe that's it. Some more questions. Some things I did forget to include. I think I might have mentioned the Black Action Movement. We have BAM 2.0 and BAM 1.0 that I did not include. I want to make sure I mentioned that. That was, I think, in the 1990s where Black students, they occupied Warfield Hall. So there's a number of things going on, which included like racial profiling, other issues. And so they got together other students and they protested in Warfield. And then a couple of years ago, there was an incident where a student posted some things on a private Snapchat and that helped lead to the creation of the Black Action Movement 2.0, in which they both were similar in that they pressed for certain demands for the university to address on the state of Black students on campus. And so I want to make sure that I noted those two things that did take place as part of the history here at Blacks of Miami. So, any more time? We have a few more minutes for questions.
Yes, we have a few Seth, if you wouldn't mind closing out your slideshow, we'll have all of the speakers be back on camera.
Okay.
So this one's Jacky. Jacky, what have you found to be the most interesting story of Black students that Miami alumni would love to hear about?
I think the most interesting would be Jerry Williams. And the reason being is because I never even knew about the story of Jerry Williams until a researcher came in and mentioned it to me. And I think the fact that this man was an athlete, academic student, and was denied his degree because he was African American, I think that was, I was shocked.
Yes. Valerie, were there prominent African American Oxford residents who played a role in the university's history?
Well, some of the earliest graduates were, like, was local. Actually, the first American male to earn a 2-year degree. Also, Oxford was William Hargraves, one of the first bachelor's degrees. And obviously, Arthur Miller played important roles in Oxford. He was leader of the NAACP, things like that. So the Oxford community has always been engaged and active, I would say, in Miami affairs as well.
Sorry, Seth, go ahead.
Yeah, any more questions?
This one's to Valerie as well. The history not just observed as a historian, but as a Miami student in the 70s. How has it changed?
I'm sorry, not sure I heard all that question.
About the history, not just observed as a historian, but as a Miami student in the 70s. How has it changed from the 70s to today?
Oh, the Miami? You're talking about Miami? Well,
Yeah.
Certainly the number of African Americans on campus has increased dramatically. That's a big change. And of course, I haven't been here all this time. I left college and went to California for a number of years and came back to take the Smith Library position. So I've missed a lot of the history in between. So, but a very noticeable difference from the 70s till now.
And I want to note that the general population students increased over time, which also was a part of minority students increasing as well. So the campus is much larger than when Valerie was on campus in the 1970s.
That's very true. And the Oxford population is often cited as being 20-some thousand, but that includes Miami students now. So the resident population of Oxford is estimated to be more like, maybe 8,000 or 9,000, which people don't realize. So the Miami students have a major influence on the community just in their numbers.
And this last comment isn't really a question, but a comment. And they said that it is tougher for alums who are not in Ohio to get involved outside of financial ability or just travel in general. And now that things are virtual, they highly encourage continuing virtual events, even if we go back to norm. So. Yes,
and I want to put in a plug in. So we have various social media outlets for folks. So we have our Instagram page, MUBLK Alum, where we highlight various Black alumni, their accomplishments. We did a whole Black history moment there in February. We post every day about a significant moment or Black history. We just did a series on Black alumni in the medical field, now doing one in education. So we highlight Black alumni and students and things that are going on campus. So make sure you can join that. Also have a private Black alumni Facebook page. We have a LinkedIn page as well. And I also encourage folks, the alumni, to mentor our students, and you can join Miami Alumni Connect. So those are the virtual ways to still be engaged and see how things are going, what things are going on.
And as a reminder, anyone who asks about enrollment numbers, I will send you a follow-up email with a link and who to talk to. And I just wanted to thank Seth, Valerie, and Jacky for leading this webinar today. Please be sure to look at the fun events again that we have tonight or tomorrow. for our very first virtual alumni weekend. We're so happy to have you here, and we really appreciate your time. So thank you, presenters, and thank you, people who are watching. Have a great night.
Thank you.